My brother-in-law became CEO after my wife died and fired me just 4 days later. He didn't know I owned 65% of the company. Next Monday was about to get interesting. Hey Reddit, I've been sitting on this for weeks, and I'm finally ready to share it. Grab some snacks and strap in. This one's intense. Name's Arthur, 59 male. I was still wearing my funeral suit when my brother-in-law slid a termination packet across the boardroom table. 4 days after I buried my wife, this guy fired me, and he didn't have the faintest clue that I owned 65% of the company he thought he'd just inherited. Neenah, Wisconsin. Fox Valley. Paper and packaging country. The kind of place where factories still mean something and a handshake still counts. My wife's family had been making corrugated boxes here since 1971, back when her grandfather started with one folder gluer and a dream about shipping cheese wheels without them getting crushed. Now her brother sat at the head of the table. Wade had his hair slicked back like a guy who'd just discovered what pomade was. 41 years old and already playing king. He didn't look like a man who'd just lost his sister. He looked like a man who'd finally heard his number called. He had this way about him. Smooth. The kind of guy who remembered your kid's name, but somehow always left you feeling like you'd been pickpocketed. Elise used to call him the fox in the henhouse, back when she thought it was funny. Around the table sat people who had been with Prescott Packaging longer than Wade had been paying attention to it. Gus, our CFO, 62, built like a retired linebacker. The kind of guy who kept backup files of his backup files and still didn't trust the cloud. Kayla from operations ran the floor like a drill sergeant with a clipboard. Could tell you the footage count on any box style without looking it up. Stu, the board chair, semi-retired dairy farmer who'd known Elise's father back when they were both young. They all looked at me with that same tight expression. Sympathy mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe. Because nobody expected this meeting to be about firing me. In the corner, half hidden behind a filing cabinet, sat Dale, our IT guy. Mid-40s, looked perpetually exhausted. He had a tablet in his lap, and that 1,000-yard stare of a man who'd just spent his morning explaining to someone that, no, you can't fix the ERP by just restarting the internet. Dale and I had exchanged maybe 40 words total in the past year. Most of them were him telling me the badge reader in the loading dock needed a firmware update, and me nodding like I understood what that meant. Wade cleared his throat. The sound echoed through the silent room. First, he said, clicking a little remote like he was about to launch a TED Talk, I want to thank everyone for being here. I know it's been a difficult week. His voice had that practiced sympathy you hear from insurance adjusters. I sat there with my hands folded. Wade announced the board had asked him to step in as interim CEO. Gus shifted in his seat. Stu nodded stiff. I could hear the January wind outside rattling the windows. Then Wade looked at me. His expression was the closest thing to genuine I'd ever seen from him. Arthur, he said, addressing me. I'm going to keep this simple. My stomach clenched. He slid that packet across the table toward me. Thick, clean, fresh staples. The first page had our company logo at the top and a header that read Separation Agreement. Gus made a sound like someone had stepped on his foot. Kayla's jaw tightened. Stu looked confused, like he was trying to process what he was seeing. In the corner, Dale raised his eyebrow. For him, that was basically a standing ovation of surprise. Wade explained that my employment was being terminated effective immediately. Said they were moving in a new direction. A new direction. I let that phrase sit there. It had no meaning. Just a corporate blanket you throw over a mess when you don't want to explain what's underneath. Wade folded his hands. Arthur, you've been VP of operations for a long time. Longer than most. But Prescott Packaging needs fresh thinking. Modern leadership. I looked at him. Tried to find some trace of the guy who'd stood next to me at Elise's hospital bed 3 weeks ago, holding her hand, crying what I thought were real tears. You're firing me, I said. I'm restructuring the executive team. 4 days after your sister's funeral. His smile flickered. Arthur, I know this is hard for you, but we have to think about the company's future. Investor confidence. Optics. Optics. Like the 30 years I'd given this place were a PR problem to be managed. Kayla spoke up, voice tight. Wade, Arthur runs the supplier relationships. Half our board vendors won't even... Wade lifted a hand without looking at her. Kayla, please. Let me finish. Stu cleared his throat. This seems sudden, Wade. Wade turned to him with that smooth, practiced smile. Sudden? Stu, my sister passed away. That's sudden. This is just necessary housekeeping. My hands stayed folded, but I could feel something boiling in my chest. I stared at the packet. Then I noticed something on page 6. A clause buried under a header called Acknowledgement. It said something about me acknowledging I held no voting interest in Prescott packaging. It was written sloppy, like someone had copied a template off LegalZoom and filled in the blanks wrong. I didn't react at all. I just filed that little detail away. Wade tapped his pen on the table. If you sign today, your severance is clean. 90 days. Full benefits through March. If you don't, he shrugged. We'll have to go another route. What route is that? His smile widened. Legal. Security. It doesn't have to be unpleasant, Arthur, but it can be. In the corner, Dale was typing something on his tablet. I picked up the pen, signed the severance portion, initialed the pages that didn't matter. And when I reached that sloppy clause about voting interest, I paused just a heartbeat. Wade stopped tapping his pen. Then I initialed it too, because I wasn't signing away anything real. That clause was a bluff, drafted by someone who didn't understand the difference between employment agreements and ownership structures. And if Wade thought it protected him, it would make him sloppy. Sloppy guys always trip themselves up. I just needed to wait. I slid the packet back. Wade gathered it up like he'd won a poker hand. Security will escort you out, he said. Take any personal items, but everything else belongs to the company, including the laptop. Didn't bring the laptop. Good, he smiled. That satisfied smile. Clean break. I stood up slowly. My knees protested. 59 years old, and every joint felt like it needed oiling. I looked around the room at the people who'd built this place alongside me and Elise. Kayla's eyes were wet. Gus looked like he wanted to flip the table. Stu stared at his hands helplessly. Dale caught my eye for half a second. Something passed between us. The kind of look you give someone when you both know something nobody else in the room has figured out yet. Take care of each other, I said to the room. Wade snorted softly, touching. 2 security guys walked me to the elevator, both avoiding eye contact. On the way down, I caught my reflection in the elevator mirror. Hollow eyes, tie crooked, widower, and now fired. And something else Wade hadn't counted on. Owner. The elevator opened to the lobby. January in Wisconsin. 23 degrees and dropping. The kind of cold that makes your face hurt. I got in my truck, started the engine, and sat there for a long moment with my hands on the wheel, thinking about Elise, about Wade, about whatever he was really planning. Then I drove home. I sat in my driveway for 45 minutes with the engine off. The house was dark, no lights in the windows. Elise and I had bought this place in 1994. A craftsman-style 3-bedroom with a wraparound porch and a garage that was too small for anything but a single car and my workbench. We'd raised 2 kids here, buried a dog in the backyard, and spent 30 winters complaining about the heating bill. Now it was just me and a refrigerator full of casseroles from church ladies. I hung my coat in the hallway closet, the black coat, and when I reached into the pocket, my fingers touched something small and cold. A brass paperclip. Elise's paperclip, the one she always kept on her desk, bent slightly from years of her straightening and rebending it when she was thinking. Wrapped around it was a yellow sticky note, folded tight. I unfolded it. 2 lines in her handwriting. Blue folder, filing cabinet. If my brother ever tries it. My throat tightened so hard. The kind of anger that sits there. Waits. Doesn't make a sound. The next morning, I drove to a converted gas station on the edge of town that sold live minnows, mediocre breakfast sandwiches, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. The owner, Hal, was 70-something and had been my fishing buddy since before Elise and I started dating. He looked up when I walked in, grunted once, and poured black coffee. Heard about the meeting, he said. News travels fast. Small town. News travels before it happens. He set the cup down hard. Wade always was a weasel. So what are you going to do about it? I wrapped my hands around the mug. I'm going to wait. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Patience is key. I spent the rest of the morning in Elise's home office. The blue folder sat exactly where she said it would be. Top drawer of the filing cabinet, behind the tax returns. Inside were documents I'd seen before, years ago, but never really examined. Voting trust agreement, share transfer forms. Notarized. Dated. Filed with the state of Wisconsin. There was a business card clipped to the inside cover. Harold, the attorney who'd helped Elise set this up. 65%. Elise had done this 11 years earlier, right after her father died, and Wade started making noise about modernizing the family's approach to the business. I remembered that summer, how quiet she'd been at dinner. Wade asked me today what my shares were worth, she'd finally said one evening. That's not unusual, I told her. No, she'd said, but the way he asked was. She never explained further, just handled it. That was Elise. She could smell trouble coming before it even got close, and she took care of it before anyone else noticed. I closed the folder and leaned back. Owning 65% didn't make me feel powerful, but it made me feel responsible. And like I was about to disappoint a lot of people if I screwed this up. Even Elise. She had never told me about this directly. I understood why now. She didn't want the weight of it hanging over us during whatever time we had left, so she left me the note instead. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Arthur Dalton? Yes. This is Dale Murdoch. From IT. I blinked. Dale? Yeah. A pause. You got time to meet? Somewhere not the office, and not anywhere with security cameras that Wade can access. That sounds shady as hell. It should. Another pause. There's a quick trip on Highway 114, the one with the broken ice machine. I'll be in the parking lot. Gray Subaru with the check engine light that's been on for 3 years. He hung up before I could respond. 30 minutes later, I pulled into the Quick Trip parking lot. Dale's Subaru was parked in the back corner, positioned so he could see both exits. The man had either watched too many spy movies or had trust issues that predated his employment at Prescott Packaging. Probably both. When I climbed into the passenger seat, he was eating a hot dog that looked like it had been rotating on those rollers since the Clinton administration. Want one? He offered. They're terrible. I'm good. He nodded, chewing. So, Wade's an idiot. Tell me something I don't know. No, I mean technically an idiot. Like dangerously stupid. He pulled out a tablet. He thinks because he changed your badge access and removed your login credentials that you're locked out. Doesn't understand that every change gets logged. Every single one. I've been doing this for 12 years. You know how many executives think delete means gone forever? All of them. He turned the screen toward me. Rows of data, timestamps, user actions. This is the access log from the day after Elise's funeral. At 11:40 p.m., someone using Wade's admin credentials removed your building access, revoked your ERP permissions, and flagged your email for deletion. He scrolled down. At 11:50 p.m., same credentials, someone accessed the HR system and created a separation document. The one he gave you today. My jaw tightened. He had this planned. Since before the funeral, looks like. Dale scrolled again. But here's where it gets good. 2 days ago, someone accessed the shared drive and deleted a PowerPoint presentation. Title was Strategic Partnership Proposal. I recovered it from the backup server. What's in it? Something flickered in his eyes. A pitch deck. For selling the company to a private equity group out of Chicago. Layoffs. Benefits cuts. Plant consolidation. Pension liquidation. He paused. 58 names on the reduction list. People with 20, 30 years in. People who came to Elise's funeral. I stared at the screen. Why are you showing me this? He took another bite of his hot dog. Because Elise was the only executive who ever remembered my name. Everyone else just calls me the computer guy or hey, the internet's down. She asked about my kids. Brought me leftovers when she knew I was working late on server maintenance. He shrugged. And because Wade tried to blame me when the shipping scanners crashed last month, said it was IT negligence. Made me sit through a 2-hour meeting with HR about my performance issues. What actually caused the crash? Wade's nephew unplugged the router to charge his phone. The same nephew Wade just hired as digital transformation coordinator. His job, as far as I can tell, is to walk around with an iPad and ask people if they've considered leveraging AI. Leveraging AI for what? Exactly. Dale finished his hot dog. Nobody knows, including him. What do you want, Dale? I want to keep my job. I want the people on that layoff list to keep their jobs. And I want to watch Wade's face when he realizes he's not as smart as he thinks he is. He gathered his tablet. You own 65% of the voting shares. I know because I manage the document archive, and I'm not stupid. Wade doesn't know because he's never actually looked at the corporate filings. He just assumed. How do you know what I own? Dale almost smiled. Almost. Arthur, I've been there for 12 years. I know everything. I know Gus has a secret Pinterest board for woodworking projects. I know Kayla's been taking online classes for her MBA. He opened his car door. Monday's the big board meeting. Wade's bringing in the private equity people on Zoom. He wants to announce the strategic partnership and vote on the governance changes. And you think I should stop him? I think you're the only one who can. I'll have everything compiled by Sunday night. Access logs, the recovered deck, calendar invites between Wade and the PE guys going back 4 months. Email threads he thought he'd deleted. He paused. You bring the ownership documents. I'll bring the receipts. Between the two of us, we should be able to ruin his whole week. After we finished the conversation, I left his car and he drove off. I sat there for a long time, staring. Then I went home. Friday started with Hal calling at 6 a.m. His ice fishing shack had blown over on Lake Winnebago, and he needed help setting it back up. So instead of plotting revenge, I spent 3 hours wrestling a plywood box back onto runners in 8-degree weather. Afterward, sitting inside the shack staring at holes that probably didn't have any fish under them, Hal asked if I was thinking about the meeting. Hard not to. Elise used to say you'd wait out a glacier if you thought it was being unreasonable. She also said you were stubborn as a mule when you finally got moving. He jabbed at the ice. So, you finally getting moving? Yeah, I think I am. Saturday brought more complications. My daughter Jenny called from Milwaukee, worried because she'd heard something happened at the plant. I spent an hour reassuring her that everything was under control, that she didn't need to drive up. My son Kevin texted from Denver. Shorter, more practical. You okay? Need anything? I told him I was fine. Dad, Jenny said before hanging up, Mom would want you to fight. I know. I mean it. She told me once that if anything ever happened to her, the thing she'd worry about most was you just giving up, letting Wade win because it was easier. I'm not giving up, Jenny. Good, because Uncle Wade cries when people yell at him. Sunday was quiet. I reorganized the garage, fixed a dripping faucet, dug out the company bylaws from Elise's files, and read them cover to cover, something I should have done years ago. Turned out majority shareholders had a lot more rights than I'd realized. At 8 p.m., Dale texted instructions for a secure email. Password was the serial number on the broken break room microwave. The email contained a folder with 17 attachments: access logs, calendar screenshots, the recovered PowerPoint deck, email chains between Wade and someone named Harrison Cope at Great Lakes Capital Partners. 4 months of correspondence, starting 2 weeks after Elise's diagnosis, went from treatable to terminal. I read through it all. Wade had been planning this since September, before Elise was even in hospice. He'd had preliminary calls with the PE group while she was still doing chemo. He'd drafted the strategic partnership proposal the week she stopped eating solid food. By the time I finished, I called Dale. You get everything? Yeah. Good. A pause. One more thing. Wade's nephew, the digital transformation kid, he's been using the company credit card for personal stuff. Nothing huge. DoorDash, Spotify, a monthly subscription to something called Alpha Male Academy that I'm choosing not to investigate further. Is that relevant? Probably not. I just thought you should know that Wade's hiring practices are as bad as everything else about him. Another pause. One more thing. I'm adding you to the board meeting guest list. Observer status. Wade won't notice until you're already in the room. Can you do that? Arthur, I control the calendar system, the badge access, and the guest registration database. I can do a lot of things. He paused. See you Monday. Monday came in cold and bright. I scraped ice off my windshield with an old credit card, and I drove to the plant through empty streets, past the paper mill smokestacks, and the frozen river and the Bergstrom dealership. I parked in the visitor lot. Used to park in the executive lot, but that access was revoked along with everything else. The security guard at the front desk, new guy, couldn't have been more than 25, looked at my name on the visitor list and did a double take. Mr. Dalton? That's me. They said you might try to come in. That I should call Mr. Prescott if I'm on the board meeting guest list. You can check. The kid checked, frowned, checked again. His hand hovered near the phone like he was waiting for someone to tell him what to do. It says, observer status? That's right. He handed me a visitor badge reluctantly. I passed Marilyn from HR, who pretended not to see me. Passed 2 guys from shipping who definitely did see me and gave me small nods, the kind you give someone when you're not sure if acknowledging them will get you fired. The company Grapevine was working overtime. Everyone knew something was happening. The boardroom was packed when I walked in. More people than the termination meeting. Word had gotten out that something big was coming. Gus sat at his usual spot, looking like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Kayla was in the corner with a tablet, ready to take notes. Stu had his farmer hands folded on the table, face giving away nothing. And at the head of the table, Wade Prescott was holding court. He'd gone all out. New suit, professional haircut, a wireless clicker in his hand like Steve Jobs about to unveil the iPhone. On the big screen, little boxes were blinking to life as the Zoom call connected. 2 guys from Great Lakes Capital Partners in matching blue shirts, a lawyer from a Chicago firm, and what looked like an accountant who'd rather be anywhere else. Dale was in the corner, half hidden behind a rolling cart of AV equipment, fiddling with a laptop cable. He'd told security he was there to troubleshoot the video conferencing setup. Technically true, if you squinted. He caught my eye and gave me a nod. I took a seat in the back, set my leather folder on my lap, folded my hands. Inside the folder, the ownership documents, the trust agreement, and a printout of the bylaws with the relevant sections highlighted. Wade noticed me. His smile flickered, then smoothed over. "Arthur," he said, like I was an old acquaintance who'd shown up at the wrong party. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Board meetings are open to shareholders," I said. "Article 4, Section 3. I checked. His eyes twitched. "You're not a shareholder. You were an employee." "I'm a lot of things, Wade." He stared at me for a long moment, trying to read something in my face. I gave him nothing. Just sat there like I was waiting for a bus. "Fine," he said finally. "You can observe, but this is a formal meeting, Arthur. No interruptions." "Wouldn't dream of it." Wade turned back to the screen, clicker in hand, and launched into his presentation. I had to give him credit. He'd prepared. Slides about market positioning and operational efficiency, and unlocking shareholder value. Charts showing theoretical cost savings, projections that looked impressive if you didn't know that half the numbers were made up. The private equity guys nodded along. They'd seen pitches like this before. Companies in distress. Family businesses with aging leadership. Opportunities to optimize and streamline, and all the other words that meant firing people and selling assets. Wade clicked to a slide labeled Strategic Workforce Alignment. "Phase 1 involves a targeted reduction in headcount," he said smoothly. "Approximately 58 positions, primarily in production and shipping. Redundancies that have accumulated over decades of, frankly, sentimental management." I felt the room shift. "Additionally," Wade continued, "we'll be consolidating pension obligations and restructuring benefits packages to align with industry standards." In the corner, Dale's fingers moved across his keyboard. "The partnership with Great Lakes Capital will provide the capital infusion we need to modernize operations," Wade said. "New equipment, new systems, a new era for Prescott Packaging." One of the PE guys, Harrison Cope, based on the name tag, leaned forward. "And the current leadership team? What's the transition plan?" Wade smiled. "I'll be staying on as CEO, of course. The board has already approved my interim status, and I expect that to become permanent within the quarter." Stu shifted in his seat. He hadn't approved anything permanent. Neither had the rest of the board. "As for the remaining executives," Wade continued, "we'll be evaluating each position for redundancy. Arthur Dalton, our former VP of Operations, has already departed. Others will be assessed on a case-by-case basis." Kayla's pen stopped moving. Wade clicked to the next slide. "Now, for the vote." "Before we vote," I said. The room went silent. Wade turned slowly. Something behind his eyes had sharpened. "Arthur," I said, "no interruptions." "This won't take long," I stood up. "I just need to correct something in the record." "There's nothing to correct. You're not part of this meeting. You're observing." "Actually," I said, walking toward the table, "I'm a majority shareholder, which gives me a little more than observation rights." Gus's pen slipped out of his fingers and clattered on the table. Stu's hands went flat against the wood. Wade laughed, forced, high-pitched. "Arthur, you're confused. You're grieving. I understand. But you don't have any ownership stake in this company. You were an employee. That's all." I set my leather folder on the table. "I own 65% of the voting shares of Prescott Packaging," I said. "Have for 11 years. Elise transferred them to a trust after your father died. You would have known that if you'd ever actually read the corporate filings instead of assuming you understood them." Wade's face went through about 6 different expressions in 3 seconds. "That's not possible," he said. I shrugged. "Call your lawyer." Wade looked at the Zoom screen. The lawyer from Chicago was already typing something. "This is ridiculous," Wade said, voice rising. "You're bluffing. You're a bitter old man who can't accept that." "Dale," I said calmly, "you want to show everyone what you found?" In the corner, Dale stood up from his equipment cart. He walked to the projector like a man who had all the time in the world, which was weird if you knew how he usually moved. He plugged in a cable, clicked a button, and waited. The screen went black for 2 seconds. Then a spreadsheet appeared. "This is the access log from January 8th, Dale said in his flat, deadpan voice. "The night after Elise's funeral. At 11:40 p.m., someone using Mr. Prescott's credentials revoked Mr. Dalton's building access, email, and ERP permissions. At 11:50 p.m., the same credentials were used to create a separation agreement in the HR system." Wade's face went red. "That's private company data. I'm the IT administrator," Dale said. "This is literally my job." He clicked again. Another spreadsheet appeared. "This is a log of email correspondence between Mr. Prescott and Harrison Cope at Great Lakes Capital, beginning September 14th, 4 months ago. 2 weeks after Elise's diagnosis was upgraded to terminal." Kayla's tablet hit the table. Someone's phone buzzed in their pocket, and they fumbled to kill it. Wade's face had gone white. You can't. That's private. Dale clicked again. A PowerPoint slide appeared. The title read, Prescott Packaging, Strategic Partnership Proposal. This is a presentation that was deleted from the shared drive 6 days ago. I recovered it from the backup server. Dale's voice remained completely flat. Slide 23 contains a list of 58 employees targeted for termination, including individuals with over 30 years of service. He clicked again. The layoff list filled the screen. Names, job titles, years of service. Some of them were people in this building right now. People who'd shown up to work today not knowing their names were on a spreadsheet that would end their careers. Gus made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. You wanted digital transformation, Dale said, his voice completely flat. There you go. I transformed your lies into spreadsheets. Stu exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a week. Somewhere behind me, a chair creaked as someone shifted their weight. On the Zoom screen, the private equity guys looked like they'd just watched their deal go up in smoke. Wade tried to recover. I'll give him that. He was nothing if not a fighter when his back was against the wall. This is stolen property, he sputtered, pointing at Dale. You accessed confidential systems without authorization. I'll have you arrested. I'm the IT administrator, Dale said, unmoved. Accessing systems is literally my job. Every action I took was logged and documented, including yours. Wade turned to the board. Stu, Gus, this is obviously a setup. Arthur is manipulating you. He's been unstable since Elise. Wade, Stu's voice cut through. Sit down. I'm the CEO. You're the interim CEO, Gus said. Key word being interim. And based on what we're looking at, you might not be that for much longer. On the Zoom screen, the private equity guys were having a muted conversation with the lawyer. Harrison Cope unmuted just long enough to say, we need to pause this discussion. There appear to be material disclosure issues. Wade's composure had evaporated. What replaced it was panic dressed up as confidence. He stood up from the table, pacing now, tie loosened, that polished image falling apart in real time. Arthur, he said, turning to me, let's talk about this privately. We can work something out. We're past private conversations, Wade. I'm serious. Whatever you want. A seat on the board. Consulting fees. Hell, I'll restore your old position. We can pretend none of this happened. You mean the position you created a fake separation agreement for? While your sister was still alive? Stu's chair scraped the floor as he leaned back. Gus was staring at his notepad. Kayla had stopped typing. Even the security guard by the door looked uncomfortable. Wade's eyes darted around, looking for an ally, finding none. That's not... I didn't... Elise was still doing chemo, still fighting. And you were already planning how to cut 58 jobs and sell the company your grandfather built to a private equity firm that would strip it for parts. It's business, Arthur. It's not personal. You started planning this while your sister was dying. I kept my voice level, flat. If that's not personal, Wade, I don't know what is. Wade looked at Dale again. You had no right to access those files. I had every right, Dale said. You put me on a performance improvement plan because your nephew unplugged a router. You threatened my job because you needed someone to blame. And you were planning to fire me anyway. I'm on your list. Page 3. Right under the shipping supervisor who's been here since 1986. Kayla stood up suddenly. I'm calling a motion to suspend all partnership discussions pending a full review of these materials. Seconded, Gus said immediately. Wade slammed his hand on the table. I'm the CEO. The board approved interim status, Stu said, standing now too. And the board can unapprove it. All in favor of suspending? Every hand went up, even the 2 junior board members who usually just nodded along with whatever Wade suggested. Wade stood frozen. For a moment, he almost looked like a man who just realized he'd lost something he couldn't get back. Then his face hardened. This isn't over, he said. I have lawyers. I have contracts. You have exposure, I said quietly. There's a legal term for what you did, Wade. Breach of fiduciary duty. Maybe worse. On the Zoom screen, Harrison Cope unmuted one final time. We're terminating this call. Great Lakes Capital will not be proceeding with any further discussions regarding Prescott Packaging. The boxes went dark, one after another, like lights at closing time. Wade stared at the empty screen, then at me, then at the room full of people who had watched him fall apart in real time. Security stepped forward. This isn't over, he said again, but his voice had lost its edge. He was already calculating, already looking for the next angle. Yeah, I said. It is. He straightened his tie, smoothed his jacket, tried to leave with some dignity, but his hands were shaking. Everyone in the room saw it. The door closed behind him, and the boardroom exhaled. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Wade didn't go quietly. He hired a lawyer from Madison who sent aggressive letters claiming wrongful termination, defamation, and tortious interference with business relationships. His lawyer kept referencing the severance agreement I'd signed. Harold, the attorney, filed a response that was 3 pages long and absolutely brutal. The severance clause was unenforceable. The ownership transfer was rock solid, and Wade's own emails showed a pattern of behavior that no judge would look at favorably. The lawyers went back and forth for about 10 days. Then Wade's attorney stopped returning calls. Turned out Wade couldn't pay the retainer. The board met twice more in January. First meeting removed Wade as interim CEO. Second meeting appointed Kayla as acting CEO. She didn't want the job, but she was the only one everyone trusted. Dale got a raise and the title of Chief Information Officer, which he immediately complained about. 3 words, all meaningless. Now people expect me to actually direct things instead of just fixing stuff. The layoff list was formally killed. Every single name stayed on payroll. We did have to cut some costs, delayed an equipment upgrade, renegotiated vendor contracts, but nobody lost their job. Tom, the shipping supervisor who'd been with the company since 1986, stopped me on the floor one day to shake my hand. He didn't say much, just thanks, and something about his grandkids being able to keep their health insurance. Then went back to work. As for Wade, he showed up at the plant about 3 days after the board meeting, trying to collect personal items from his office. Security escorted him out after he started trying to download files from the shared drive. Dale had already changed all the passwords. He tried to log in 11 times, Dale told me later. Kept using his old password. Then, password 123. Then, Prescott 2024. Then, the name of his dog. What's his dog's name? Champion. Purebred something or other. Yeah, that sounds about right. Last I heard, he took a position with a packaging company in Indiana. Entry level. The industry isn't that big. People talk. We got coffee at Hal's one morning in early February. Me, Hal, and Dale. An unlikely combination, but it felt right. So what happens now? Hal asked. We keep the lights on. Train up the next generation. Dale made a sound that might have been a laugh. You gonna retire? Eventually. And do what? I thought about the empty house, about Elise's recliner that still smelled faintly like lavender. Fish, I said. Fix things. Maybe buy a new truck. Hal grunted. About time. That F-150's been dying for years. Dale stared out the window. My kid's got a hockey game Saturday. You should come. It's incredibly boring. You're inviting me to watch youth hockey? I'm inviting you to sit in a cold arena while children fall down a lot. Kayla said you need to get out more. I watched the 2 of them bicker for a few minutes. 2 people I never would have expected to be sitting with on a random Tuesday. Fine. Saturday. 3 months later, I was standing in Elise's old office when my phone buzzed. The plant had quieted down after second shift ended, and I was doing what I did most evenings now, looking out the window at the Fox River, pretending I had somewhere else to be. We'd made it through the winter without any major disasters. No more private equity vultures. No more surprise layoffs. Just the steady work of making boxes and shipping them. Kayla had grown into the CEO role. She'd implemented a profit-sharing program Elise had always talked about. She'd promoted 3 people from the floor to supervisor positions. She'd even fixed the break room microwave, which Dale called the most significant leadership achievement in company history. I'd stepped back from daily operations in April, kept my board seat in office, but let the running fall to people better at it than me. I still came in most days, though. I'd walk the floor, check in with the guys on the line. People seemed to like having me around. Dale was still Chief Information Officer, which he still hated. I liked it better when nobody knew my name. You could have said no. The money wasn't meaningless. Also, Kayla threatened to make me supervise Wade's nephew. He still works here? Not anymore. He quit after someone forwarded him the relevant tax code about Alpha Male Academy not being a business expense. The sunset faded. I sat in Elise's chair and pulled out the brass paperclip. Bent, worn, still exactly as she'd left it. Jenny had come up for Easter with the kids. Kevin flew in from Denver. We'd done a picnic at the lake, all of us crammed into Hal's fishing shack when it started raining. Jenny said I seemed less sad, which I took as a win. My phone buzzed. Hal. Ice is out on the lake. First open water. You got your boat ready? Hal, it's 40 degrees. Perfect fishing weather. Don't be soft. I smiled. Give me an hour. On my way out, I passed Dale in the hallway. He was carrying a tangle of cables and looking like he regretted every life decision. Problem? Someone in accounting installed their own printer. Now the entire shared drive thinks it's 1987. I laughed. I drove to Hal's bait shop, where he was loading tackle into his ancient boat. You hear about Wade? He say. Indiana company let him go. He's selling car insurance now. Huh. Fitting. Man spent his whole life trying to sell things that weren't his. I climbed into the boat. Wade Prescott. Car insurance salesman. Not the big dramatic ending he deserved. No courtroom. No public humiliation. Just a slow slide into nothing. But that was fine. The plant kept running. The workers kept their jobs. Life went on. That's what Elise had wanted. Not revenge. Just making sure things kept going. Stability. A place where people could show up, do their work, and go home knowing the ground wasn't going to shift. I touched the paperclip one more time. You did good, Arthur, Hal said. She'd be proud. Maybe. Definitely. He handed me a fishing rod. Now stop being sentimental and help me catch dinner. I took the rod. The boat rocked as we pushed off from the dock. First cast of the season. Not a bad way to spend a Tuesday. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.